Welcome to another episode of The Road Less Traveled. I'm your host, Evan Drisner, and I'm with Andrey Olinov from Complete Technologies.
Hey,
thanks for being our guest.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
My first memory of you is being at that time, you look young anyway, which is good, because I look like an old, weathered, angry man. You were a very young entrepreneur just starting in the technology world, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So, and you did a presentation to a group of business leaders about the cloud, and the cloud was like, what's the cloud?
Right.
And you're walking us through it. But let's go even further back. So you, obviously, you're in the technology world right now. Where did you get in? How did you get into that? Like, what started the technology boom for you?
Sure. It's funny, but I went to linguistics school, like elementary, high school. It was linguistics. I studied English since I was 6, so grade 1. And
so where were you in school that you were studying English?
That was back in Moscow, in Russia.
Okay.
So I was born there, it was a great school, and so we did English, and then we did German a bit after grade 5, and then I found that I'm interested in computers, and was my dad's business. He had a business in Moscow selling auto parts, so he had a small network, and I got interested in it, and I had my computer, and so when I finished school, I went to study for computer science, and at that time I thought, why did I go to linguistics school in the first place? I'm never going to use my knowledge of English. It wasn't that great. I mean, it's not what it is now, I guess, but still. And then after 4 years of bachelor in computer science, me and my wife, or my future wife at that time, a girl that I met at the university, the smartest woman I've ever known, and it's actually proved, because when I met her, we were at the ranking system. She was number 1 out of 60 people in the stream, and I was number 20, so we ended up in the kind of one group. I'm the last one, because they were split up in 20 people groups. So anyways, I pulled her down. We were 11 and 12, a little bit after. But so we thought about moving from Moscow, and we looked at different places. We had an offer to go study in Australia, but for some reason it seemed like a different planet. And then Canada. So in my university back in Moscow, there was a connection with the University of Saskatchewan.
Okay.
And we got an offer, and we said we either go together or we're not going. So we got scholarships, 2 of us, and in August 2009 we got married, and the next day we had a flight to Canada, and then we studied here for a couple of years.
There's that's one of it's not that well known that the U of S is a really sought after honeymoon location.
Yeah, I know, and it's
it's really romantic.
Yeah, highly recommended with with its gardens and everything.
Yeah. So Andrey, before we really get into now you being in Saskatoon, I think that there's a part of your story that really comes back from your family. You said your dad had a business in Moscow. You're probably too young to really remember communism.
Well, I was born in Soviet Union. I don't remember any of it.
Yeah. So your dad would, and his business would have really went through that transition. So how was that for your family? Because it couldn't have been easy, right? Like, was small business really successful in Moscow in that transition?
You know what? His business, I think, was successful. He sold it after 10 years, and successfully. It was challenging.
Can imagine.
It was very challenging. I can't imagine running a business in Moscow. I know, it's challenging enough doing it here, but compared to that, it's nothing. I think we're just kind of playing in a sandbox. They change tax rules all the time. I don't know if he ever dealt with like mafia or something, like, because that's the thing, right? I never asked him about it, but it was like 90s were pretty big on that. But yeah, I think that I've never been that involved in the business. I've never asked my parents about it as much, but I guess witnessing that from kind of from the sidelines maybe stuck in my head so that it became part of my reality. You know, having a business is fine.
Well, and I think that's it. I think it's just growing up in the environment of seeing someone that really is eating what they kill.
Mm-hmm.
You become more comfortable with that it's not that this steady paycheck always.
Yeah.
So you're now, okay, we'll fast forward. So you get married.
Yeah.
And you guys are, let's do our honeymoon at the U of S. So
Yeah.
you come to the U of S to get your master's, right? Is that what you guys were working on? Was there any fear in that? Or did you feel like, you know what, growing up where you grew up, knowing an entrepreneur's son, that, you know what, we're just going to do this?
Well, so moving to a different country, it was we were very nervous. We were more excited, I think, and it helps that when you're young and excited, you don't pay a lot of attention to these things. We had one bag of stuff for the two of us. That's all we came with, and we had wedding rings, which are now sold because I couldn't pay my staff at one time, so we had to sell them. But
oh man,
yeah, it's. When we came, it was great. Lots of it's like honeymoon period when you change anything, and it was like actual honeymoon basically. But we liked Saskatoon. We fell in love with Saskatoon people, and Saskatchewan was so welcoming to us. Once we graduated from the master's program, I went looking for a job, and I applied for a job at the U of S for part of their IT department because that's what I knew how to do. I started working, I guess I'm kind of jumping back and forth, but
perfect.
I started working in IT when I was 14. I did like full-time in summer and half like part-time while I was in school. And I worked as part of IT department as a bottom of the junior technician, like hooking up hundreds of monitors and stuff like that. So I applied for this job at the U of S, and I was rejected. And my wife actually just recently found that letter of rejection, and now I have it in my frame on the wall in the office. So that's when we realized that maybe getting a job may not be the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because it didn't work. So
fair enough.
We, I don't know how we came up with the idea of like starting a business, but so we looked at franchising, and that's how I started. Because I had no idea about the brand or logo or marketing plan or any of that, and we looked around in the franchising magazines and found the franchise that seemed like a good fit. It was inexpensive because we didn't have a lot of money, and all the money that we had went towards the franchise fee. And but they gave me the guidance and the right training to get started, and so that's. So I think I felt pretty safe when I started. Now thinking back, no extra money, no job, no assets basically, and so I started this business, and my wife gets pregnant with our first child, and I guess we just didn't look back, and we never thought that this could fail, and that what kind of helped us to move forward.
Yeah, sometimes when there's the only place to look is up, you don't even realize how down you are.
That's right.
So that's sometimes advantageous.
Yeah.
You're starting the business, you're doing a franchise. Before that, like when you came here for school, did you think, you know what, I'm going to move to Saskatchewan and stay there? Or were you was the plan get our master's and potentially move back?
Well, I think when we first saw the ad about master's students needed at the U of S, I remember reading because it was in Russian, and I was reading the name of the place. It was like Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and Canada. I was like, oh, Canada, I understand. The other part, I was like, I have no idea where that is. And and that's what we thought we were going to do. Canada was kind of top of the list. So we thought, we'll come to Canada, we'll get our education. I don't think we thought much about whether we're going to stay here or not. We didn't know about the climate as much, and I mean, Moscow.
Is it similar to Moscow?
It's It's like similar with, like there's 4 seasons in
Yeah,
Moscow,
okay,
and 4
okay.
seasons here, but winters are like in Siberia here.
Yeah.
My wife was born in Siberia, so she knows for sure. She, as a child, growing up, she would walk to school and think to herself, like, I'm going to move away from this cold and I'm never coming back. And then here we are, same weather, but
Well, she moved away from that cold.
from that
Now
cold,
she's got this
is
cold.
different. Yeah, that's right. So it's, I don't think the intention was to necessarily stay, neither was to move away from here. It wasn't, as a young, 22-year-old, you don't think about those things. It's just kind of like, okay, well, next step is this, and I like it, and that's what we're doing, and yeah, that's kind of how it works.
I understand that completely. When my wife and I moved here, same thing for me to go to school, and we moved from Calgary to here, and it would have been 2003-ish. We were the only U-Haul van going from Calgary to Saskatchewan at the time, and we really had no plan besides the plan was to go to school and we'll figure it out then. That's right. It's kind of the advantage of being young.
Yeah.
And really nothing holding you back. You can kind of spread your wings and see where you land. So we're going to come right back after this commercial break. My guest, Andrey, we're going to start talking about the franchise and how that started and where you're at now and what the goal is.
Yeah.
And it's going to be good. So stay tuned. After this commercial break, we'll be back with Andrey. Welcome back to The Road Less Traveled. My guest is Andrey Olinov from Complete Technologies. But before you got to Complete, you, like you said, we just kind of went over where you came from, coming to school with your wife as your honeymoon, getting your master's, and then you started a franchise. Part of that was just out of necessity.
Yeah.
You only had so much cash flow. That was the easiest way to get the branding support that you needed. So how was that? Like in terms of, you talked about it, they gave you the support, the training. Did that kind of help you really understand business in Canada and more? Did you learn more about your profession, or was it just really about that was the jumping point for you?
Yeah, good question. I think it's a little bit of everything. When you're right about doing it out of the necessity, because otherwise I wouldn't have known what to do. And joining the franchise, I thought would give me some direction. And I was very lucky that it happened how it did, because you never know who you get. But the national director of the franchise at the time, the Canadian head office was in BC, in Vancouver. And so the name of the franchise is Computer Troubleshooters. They're still around. So that national director at the time, so he did the training. And he's just he had his own franchise at the time as well. So he went through this business himself. And when he was doing the training, we followed everything like it was a religion. Like he's like, okay, you go to BNI, you find out all the local associations. NSBA, like I joined them before I even started the business.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I remember in their office, even before opening a business, talking to the admin and asking them, so what's the membership like? And she's like, well, it's, $200 some at that time. And I was like, $200. And then they're like, well, we have a student membership too. It's free. And I was like, oh, I'm a student. Well, I just graduated. And she's like, but you're joining with the company, aren't you? I was like, yeah, I guess so. She's like, well, you'll have to pay. I was like, damn it. Felt like I took a big financial hit at that time. So doing all those things, it was, everything that, another thing, my wife, she kind of volunteered to do the finances for the business. So she kind of self-taught herself, QuickBooks and the whole like AR, AP and taxes and all of that stuff. So she's been doing that for a number of years now. She's kind of being phased out, and we're outsourcing that. But we learned many things. My big thing was not the IT. I knew how to do IT at that time, and good thing it's transferable skill. But having a business and networking, and I came here. I meet people that are starting a business and they're nervous, and I was like, why are you nervous? Like, you start a business, you go around your relatives, your friends, your school, elementary, university. That's pretty big network. I came, I knew nobody, and so I actively started participating in those networking events, and that paid off. I think I actually developed a skill, like my facial memory and names is pretty awesome. I know a lot of Saskatoon-born people rely on my memory because they're like, "Hey, Andrey, who's that guy?" It's like, "Yeah, this is this and this, that company," and so I was never good with that. So it's some skills you develop as you go, and so that was mainly what I was the kind of help I got from the franchise, that guidance and best practices and whole kind of business to business professional approach, and that fit very well with me. That I knew that right from the get-go I will be focusing on the customer service and making sure that our customers are happy, and I want to invest in those long-term relationships, and that's what we're doing to this day.
So why did you do that? Like, was that innate that you understood that you needed to start networking, or was that the franchise telling you needed to do
franchise.
that?
Yeah, franchise told me. I thought it's a good idea, and I invested 100% in that. Still, I think I spend, even though I don't necessarily maybe have to, because we get a lot of business organically, a lot more than we used to, of course, at the time. But I still think that going to events, seeing clients, making connections, is the best way to kind of develop the network and market our services. Now, when people say what's my marketing plan, big part of marketing plan is winning the awards, because it gives you good recognition, and we do it very successfully.
Yeah.
And that's adds to reputation, and you're in front of a bunch of people. So yeah, so it wasn't something that I came up with doing the networking. It's definitely was something that I was told to do, and I was smart enough not to argue and just kind of follow.
Well, it can't, you said you got pregnant pretty early on in the business. Mm-hmm. So networking, I know, is busy. Like, there's a lot of events in the city, and I see you at a lot of the events. So this is now not just young Andrey. This is young Andrey and a wife and a child, all working. Like it really pays a toll. So do you look back at those 3 years? Was there any lessons you learned as a business person, or as a husband, or a dad, or that you wish you could have took back, but you learned and now became better?
Well, yes. Yes, and I don't know if whatever I did at that time could have been done differently, because when I started, and so we do not do, like, now we just had another baby 3 weeks ago, so it's definitely awesome. a different parenting style, you could say, now with the child number 3 and number 2 versus child number 1. Going back there, when I started, I knew that I'm not going to be at work, 40, 50, 60 hours a week. I knew that my schedule will be shorter, and that's the whole point. I can always get a job for 40 hours, but running a business, and then flexibility of being able to go away, and that's, I don't think that's something that I thought about at that time, but first child and the business and not enough money, and no furniture at home, like we had like boxes instead of table, and then like my wife got pretty depressed by the time my son was a year and a half old. So that's when we thought we need to do something, and we at that time we actually went to Mexico for 2.5 months, and so many good ideas came out of that. I didn't drive. I didn't say we first 4 years in Saskatoon I had no car, and I couldn't afford it, but also I kind of enjoyed biking. So I would have been on my bike when I gave that presentation. And it was tough to be without the car in Saskatoon and trying to start a business. So I was biking with like a bag of notepads to the businesses, and then just like parking my bike and then starting to go around.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, the bike that I had, I still have it. I actually won it in a draw. I didn't even buy it.
Nice.
It's a nice bike. So looking back, I think there is so much time that I kind of an energy I invested, but I got so much back, like including the bike that I won in the draw, and then the willingness of the business community to kind of accept me and help out with the business, and the whole like networking piece. People are so welcoming and friendly.
That's one of the untold stories really about entrepreneurs, is their partner in the background, whether it be their spouse or their business partner. It takes a lot of teamwork, and it can be very hard on marriages. It can be very hard on any partnership when you're both grinding in different areas. I was the same. We had a young child and I was networking, and I look back, I couldn't do that anymore. I couldn't be at an event 4 nights a week right now. I couldn't.
Right.
But when my child was young, that was the sacrifice we made, and we plugged away. So you had your franchise. You stuck with it for 3 years. Why did you leave the franchise, and how was there a clear-cut plan that you're leaving the franchise and this is going to be the business? Was that Complete Technologies right after?
Yeah.
Okay, so talk about that transition and why you did it.
Pretty easy. Computer Troubleshooters franchise, their management changed, and that national director that I started with, he was leaving the franchise, and I thought that this was my biggest value, and that's when we and also at that time I already understood kind of our niche, and we're working with businesses, and we're doing more than just like troubleshooting, and I felt like the name could be chosen better to better fit with what we do. So Complete Technologists seemed like so it was good timing. So we left the franchise, changed the name, changed the brand. And so funny enough, the national director, he left that franchise and went on his own, and we stayed in touch. And about a year ago, he reached out to me. He joined a company out of it's based out of Chicago, but he's still in Vancouver doing business advising. And he reached out, and he's like, "So I'm business advisor," and I was like sold. Let's talk. And so we worked with him. He was my business advisor for a year or just over a year. Now he's on to the new opportunity. But it was another great year of like boost of kind of his skills. So
serendipitous to right when you're jumping, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it was just a kind of natural transition at that time.
So now you have a team. Obviously, you said to sell your rings to pay.
Yeah.
So and like where do you see Complete Technologies going in the next 5 years?
Well, right now we have 10 people between 2 offices. We have office in Regina. Our bigger office is here in Saskatoon. In the next 5 years, I see ourselves expanding in numbers in Saskatchewan, as well as potentially taking on new markets. We have some clients that moved to Alberta, so potentially opening a branch there wouldn't be hard. And for IT company, it's not that hard to do. And it's I may be disclosing the trade secret, but the moment we opened Regina office, the perception changes. Us going from like a small local few people company in Saskatoon to like a
multi-site,
province-wide. And it's just what it took was rent an office and hire a guy, and so now we have 3 people there, and we have a pretty good client base out there, and we have a good coverage in the province. But opening office isn't that hard in our industry. Just as long as you have right people in place.
Yeah, that's fair. It's always about the people.
Yeah.
Andrey, thank you so much for being my guest.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Evan.
Thank you so much for watching another episode of The Road Less Traveled. I'm your host, Evan Drisner. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes on Shaw Spotlight. See you next time.